Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. One word can help you navigate the unknown. We'll find out what it is today from our guest, General Charles Jacoby. General Jacoby, thanks for being with us today.
No, it's great to be here, Bill. Thanks.
Now, you've written a book. I'm not going to give away that secret word. I'm going to let you do it. What's that magic word that's going to help us navigate the unknown?
Well, what we try to do is actually stop it from being magic, agility. And, we're trying to show that there's not a lot of mysticism about it. It's something that we need to come to grips with and across really all domains of competitive environments. So agility is the title of the book. And
the magic word, huh?
Yeah. It was a point of frustration for both Leo, my co-author, and myself, is that it's become a buzzword to some extent, and we wanted to take the buzz out of it and make it understandable to leaders in every walks of life.
Now, how would you define? There's so many words, and we always have a picture of a word, and it may be incorrect. Sure. Could you give us a definition of the word agility?
Yeah, that really was the first and most important thing we did, was sit down and say, we discovered that we were unhappy with how people were describing agility, in Leo on the business side and myself on the military side. And we worked really hard on it. We had a bunch of nerdy conversations about really focused on each individual word. But we believe agility is the organizational capacity to effectively detect, assess, and respond to environmental changes, and to do so in ways that are purposeful, decisive, and grounded in a will to win. And we picked every word and every phrase carefully, based on how we, eventually unpacked agility in the rest of the book.
Almost like you had a lawyer do it, so you defined it perfectly, that it fit the bounds and didn't go out of bounds, right?
Well, we did a lot of dumb things right in the book. One of the smart things we did is we never asked a lawyer to help us with it.
We just lost those lawyers in our audience. And by the way, when you say Leo...
I'm sorry.
That's okay. When you say Leo, that's Leo Tillman? That's your co-author?
Leo Tillman, yeah.
So we just want to give Leo the credit that's due him.
Yeah, Leo was a wonderful partner in this endeavor. And the reason we were as careful as we were is because both of us have run into the situations where, as you move within an organization, people will say agility, and then in the next room they'll say adaptive, and then they'll say flexible, and then they'll say reactive, and so unless you pin that down, it really doesn't have much meaning, and it won't carry from one part of the organization to the next. Now,
there is a bit of a controversy, I guess, what agility is, which you've defined, but I think we misunderstand it, and you make a point of saying what agility is not. So can you tell us where we go off the track a little bit?
Yeah, I think we go. It's really a lack of precision in what we understand agility to be, and how we communicate with each other, especially in uncertain times and in disrupted times, which I think we would all agree we are always on the verge of. We also think that that's kind of a human condition that we've been dealing with for a long time, increasing uncertainty and disruption. But it's not many things that are thrown out as, other words that may mean that people think mean agility, like dynamism, intuitive, innovative, resilience, things like that. They're not interchangeable. And the notion we had was that if we are not careful about how we define agility, it will lose meaning, and the organization will not be on the same sheet of music from top to bottom and from left to right across the organization.
Now, General Jacoby, we would just like to let our audience know that obviously you're a person who, you're a retired general from the military, but as I'm reading your bio, you were a 4-star commander of the North American Aerospace Defense Command, which, better known to a layman like myself, is NORAD, correct?
Correct.
And You served as the Director of Strategy, Plans, and Policy for the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the U.S. military representative to the UN. So we're really talking to the right guy.
I hope so, right.
I mean, if you don't know about agility and plans and strategy, you're protecting us. You're out there and you're telling the other leaders what to do, and with NORAD. So I think we can trust you, and we're glad to have you on the show.
Thank you.
But as I think I said to you before the show, I would think a military man would flexibility and agility and being able to work under those conditions. We think of the military man as rigid and strict. So how come a general such as yourself is writing a book on agility?
Well, one of the things we are always fighting against is in the military is, not trying to win the last war and trying to make sure we're prepared for the next one. And like any good football team that knows they have to game plan against a different adversary every day, every game of the 16-game season, we have to be ready to have an agile approach to both the changes in the environment and the changes in our potential adversaries. And so we've really very deliberately in the last 20, 25 years adopted a philosophy of command and control in the United States military called Mission Command that really is based on many of the concepts that we identify as being the foundations of agility in this book.
Now, is this hard?
We are surprisingly ready to be agile in the face of change.
Is this difficult to teach and to get across to military people? Do they come in, as I said, with the image of, you will do this, march 400 feet or turn left, turn right? I'm being facetious, but to use an example that we all think of the military, is this hard to convey, or do they actually like it?
Well, I will tell you that, it's a process that we go through with young men and women that volunteer to be in our military. First of all, we make an assumption that everyone wants to be successful, or they wouldn't have volunteered. And so, yes, there is discipline required to operate in large groups, and there's a socialization process that takes place. But very early in every soldier, sailor, airman, and Marines experience, we try to, instill in them this idea that we are interested in their development, not just their development as soldiers, but as potential leaders. Because we can't outsource leadership in the military. When leaders go down for one reason or another, it's the next person up. And so leader development is a core competency in the military. And they get a dose of that even in their basic training, where we'll put young men and women that show potential in charge of things as soon as we possibly can.
General Jacoby, at this point in the show, we just want to remind our audience that you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is General Charles Jacoby, and he's written the book called Agility. General Jacoby, can you tell us where we can get the book and if there's a website where we can learn more?
Sure. The book is on bookshelves in Barnes and Nobles and in airports and whatnot. But I would go to the site theagilitybook.com, and you'll see a press kit and you'll see podcasts and you'll get a good feel, and hopefully you'll be enticed to pick that book up and read it and see if it can help you or your organization become more agile.
And we know it must be good because you're the guy protecting us. You're training the chiefs of staff. You're explaining this to them. And our country relies on you. I think we can trust it for our business, our restaurant, our insurance company, or whatever. Now, let me ask you, how can leaders begin to build up this agile mindset in their organizations? Can you give us a little direction there?
Sure. I would go right back to the definition. And what we think leaders first of all need to do is make sure they understand what only they do in their organization. And I tell that I do some coaching and mentoring for brand new 1-stars and 2-stars in our Army, and that's the first thing I tell them. Make sure that you know and you focus on the things that you must do for the organization. That's step one. The other thing is to be in favor of what's going to happen. And what I mean by that is make sure that you are curious and you are studying the major trend lines in our adversaries, and that you understand the competitive environment that we're in. And I think that's true for not just the military, but for businesses, for nonprofit organizations. We say in our definition that part of the agility definition is the will to win. And we think that even if you're not a military organization or a business, that every organization has to ask itself that question: what does winning mean? And define it, and make sure everyone in the organization share it with everyone in the organization, and what they do to contribute to creating a purposeful, winning organization. So I think those are a handful of important things for leaders to be focused on. And I would summarize by saying, senior leaders in organizations, they set the culture of the organization. They determine the values, they determine the priorities, and if they don't do it, somebody else will. It'll get done somewhere in the organization. They probably won't like it.
Do you find it's difficult to train people, though, especially if they don't fit that mindset, or do they come around and kind of like it quickly?
I think my experience is they come around and kind of like it.
Oh, they do? Okay.
It's infectious. When you share accountability, when you let people know how important they are and how important their job is, whether they're a rifleman in the first squad all the way at the front lines, or whether they're in the mailroom of a large organization, you let them know that they own part of both the risk and the reward of what the organization does. They will grasp it, and then when you empower them, and I'd like for you to come back and ask me about empowerment in a minute, but when you empower them to be influential in the success of the mission of the organization, they like it, and that's been my experience.
And since I have orders from the general, I know when to follow orders. The general said, ask him about empowerment. So okay. Please fill us in on that.
Yeah, I think empowerment can become a buzzword, too, if we're not careful. Everybody kind of says, oh, yes, we want to empower the organization. In the military, we really believe and we know that battles are won at the very edge of an organization. That's where we first make contact with either the competitive environment or our adversary. And so how do we empower them to be successful? And there are really some meaningful but important things you can do to empower your organization. And it's not just say the word 5 times and do an incantation. The first thing you got to do is you have to give them guidance. And I believe guidance is an art form, and it takes real effort and engagement. And it's not barking orders. It's sitting down and focusing on who you're talking to, the audience or the individuals you're talking to. You give them guidance. Then you give them authority, what you can and cannot do, what are the boundaries of your authority. Then you make it clear, and then you give them resources, and then you trust them. And the hardest part of that is trust, because trust is transactional, and you have to take a risk. That a boss is risking some measure of success by empowering others with the mission or a piece of the mission, and the subordinate is trusting the boss to not chop their head off if they make an honest mistake. And so those are really the key points of empowerment. If you don't do those things, then it is a buzzword, and you get more cynicism than you do results.
General Jacoby, at this point in the show, we're going to take a brief break. I'd like to let our audience know that I'm Bill Horan. Our guest today is General Charles Jacoby. He's the author of the book Agility. You're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. We'll be right back.
I'm a veteran. We hit a mine in Vietnam. When I came home, I didn't know where to turn.
As America's veterans face challenges, DAV is there.
My victory's been never giving up hope. My wife is always there to remind me we have a life to live.
DAV provides a lifetime of support, helping veterans of every generation get the benefits they've earned.
I am a veteran, but after I got out, I spent 2 years alone and homeless.
Every year, DAV helps more than 1 million veterans so they can reach victories great and small.
My victory was finding the support to get back on my feet. Now I'm getting things right with my family.
I finally admitted, with my PTSD, I wasn't doing well.
But there's more to be done and more victories to be won.
Now I wish I'd found DAV sooner. I am a veteran. My victory is just enjoying each day.
Help support more victories for veterans. Go to DAV.org.
Welcome back. You're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, and today we're talking to General Charles Jacoby, author of the book Agility. General Jacoby, certainly we picked the perfect PSA today to put in as our break for the show. So I hope that I think it was a coincidence, but it worked out perfectly.
Well, they sure have helped me, so I appreciate you doing that, and I know they help thousands.
Well, that's thanks to our producer, Michael, and he always does a great job. Now, you told us how to cultivate agility. I always learn by someone else's mistakes. Are there some leadership behaviors that actually can hurt an organization and make them less agile?
Sure, absolutely. I think that there are a couple of things that can really keep an organization from being agile. And the first one I think we're all familiar with, it's micromanagement. And remember back earlier in the show, I talked about how important it was for a leader to know what it is that only they do. And one of the reasons I tell brand new generals that is because if they focus on that, there'll be a tendency for them not to do other people's jobs for them. And really, micromanagement is doing other people's jobs for them, and you'll get the same results whether it's in the military or business or wherever you look. That if you want to do somebody else's job for them, they'll probably let you do it. They'll put their arms around cross their arms around their chest and put their feet up, and then the organization will slow down and not produce. I would say another thing that really hurts is when the leadership is perceived or is in fact indecisive, when they're unable to make a decision. And that runs in two sides. Either everyone can see that there's trouble right on the horizon or trouble right in front of you, and they can't get the boss to make a decision to avoid it. Or they see a golden opportunity to really make something wonderful happen, and they can't get a boss to do that. And it's usually because there is a breakdown in trust somewhere in the organization, or a breakdown in looking carefully at the environment and really understanding the nature of the competitive environment that the organization is in. Those are the two most important negative leader trends that we run into. What's
the role of risk in running a company or the military with agility?
Yeah, risk is really essential to understanding how we've defined agility. Every time a leader makes a decision, he's taken a risk, and we really think of organizations as portfolios of risk, because there's different kinds of risk, and there's many kinds of risks in business. There's different kinds of risks in military organizations, and most of the time the boss owns the risk, but the question is, does he or she share the risk with others, and how do they go about using risk really in kind of a neutral way? And so there's the risk of not responding correctly to a change in the environment, and then there's the risk of missing an opportunity to change in a disrupted environment. And both those are essential for the leaders to have processes and a culture that both gets the information up, allows for purposeful decision-making in a decisive manner to respond adequately to both opportunities and to threats.
Now, there's two different terms that come into play when we're talking about risk. Risk management and risk intelligence. And I've learned those from your book, but you better explain them to the rest of us and to me again.
Yeah. So I think that risk management is pretty well understood. It's almost a science of risk management. And actually, when a military guy looks at the way business does risk management, it's kind of backwards looking, or really compliance. Have we been complying? How did we do last quarter? Are we on our target for our goals? And those kinds of really looking at the present and looking at how have we been doing, and are we being effective and efficient in how we're doing things. Leo coined the term risk intelligence. It's a very familiar concept to the military. For us in the military, intelligence collection is all forward-looking. What are we going to run into next? What are our adversaries doing? What's happening in the environment? What's happening across our portfolio of risks, whether it's regulatory, legal, whether it's environmental, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's really a question of perspective and a question of, are we looking at the knife fight that we're in and what just happened, or are we looking forward and we're trying to figure what if and what next?
And you mentioned before that there were three pillars of agility, and we said risk intelligence, or you said risk intelligence was one. What are the other two?
Risk intelligence, decisiveness, and I think we've talked a little bit about that, decisiveness. And I can talk. Would you like me to talk about decisiveness?
Yes, please, sure.
Yeah, when I talk about decisiveness, in the book, what we've defined that as a deliberate bias for action, and that
I love that. That's got to write that one down.
Yeah, a deliberate bias for action, and that means we want an organization that's on the balls of their feet. They're predisposed to act, and as opposed to what our normal human nature is in an environment of uncertainty, which is to bow ourselves up and be ready to weather the storm, or to be uncertain and indecisive in the face of uncertainty. So that's an important term. And then execution dexterity, and what we mean by that is having processes and in place and capabilities in place that allow us to make meaningful impact on the environment. And it's as simple as, in the military, it's, do you have enough aircraft carriers, airplanes, and troops? And do you know how to use them? And do you use them in combinations correctly? And the same thing in business. What are the tools? What are the tools, and how capable are you of using the tools, whether it's mergers and acquisitions and things like that?
I'd like to let our audience know that today you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Today we're talking to General Charles Jacoby. He's the author of the book Agility. And General Jacoby, we would like to ask you again if you'd give us the website and tell us where we can get the book.
Sure. It's theagilitybook.com. And it has a lot of good information about the book. In fact, I think it lays it out pretty well for you, and I hope it excites everybody to go out there and give it a quick read and see if it can help them with how they lead or how they do business.
And for our listeners, would like you to know that if you didn't catch the entire show or like to listen to it again, you can go to nccradio.org and simply look for The Secrets of Success and the show on agility. You can take your time, take notes as I did, and tomorrow you'll be so much more agile and do so much of a better job. Now, one of the things I noticed in the book, you suggest that leaders must plan for agility. Wait a minute. Something about that sounds wrong. Did I misunderstand that, or what's going on there?
Yeah, well, okay. I love that you picked that up, because we identify that as a, potential contradiction or seemingly a contradiction to folks, but actually it's not. And you go back to the definition, and what we're asking you to do in the definition, first of all, we're asking you to effectively detect, assess, and respond, and then we're asking you to do it in purposeful ways. And that means that you're looking forward and that you have plans and contingency plans, and you've thought about, what would happen, what would we do if X, Y, or Z happen, and then what do we plan to do next once we've accomplished an objective or if we got off track. That's planning. It's a core competency in the military. And frankly, I've found that in business, it's not. It's kind of seen as overhead or seen as the COO's job or two other people's job. And there's a couple of things that are really military core competencies that, as Leo and I, spent a couple of years banging through this book, thought, well, we need to make sure we bring that out. One of them is leader development, and another important one is planning. And so we love the Eisenhower quote. Dwight David Eisenhower, when he was a young one-star planner in the Pentagon, said, a plan is nothing, but planning is everything. And so what he meant by that was that you're never going to get a perfect plan, and a plan never survives contact with the enemy. It always goes to heck in a handbasket when you run into a non-cooperative enemy. But the process of planning and wargaming and thinking about the what-ifs and the what-next helps arm you, just like a quarterback walking up to the line and seeing that the defense is lined up differently. He's got something else that he's thought about and is ready to audible at the line based on, lots of watching film, lots of planning, lots of preparation, lots of practice.
So and I love that, and I think for a lot of people, the plans may come out worthless, and we say, why do we spend all that time doing it? But the planning is everything, because we've learned a lot. We know the surrounding territory, and now if we need an escape route or an alternative method of doing something in the business world, it's out there. General Jacoby, once again, before we wrap up today, I'd ask you to give us the website and tell us where we can get the book Agility.
Sure. TheAgilityBook.com. It's a good rundown on the book, and it gives you a couple places to pick one up, and whether you're getting it on Amazon or at the airport, and they're available, and I hope people find it useful.
I'm sure they will, and for anybody who wants to have that successful business, and if you're listening to this show, that's why you're listening to it, Where the Secrets of Success. Get hold of the book Agility by our guest, General Charles Jacoby. General Jacoby, thanks for being with us, and personally, thank you for your service to our country. We'd like to let our audience know that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at this same time when we will continue our journey to success.